The board meeting will now come to order. Sheila, will you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mayor Joe Carr.
Here.
Judge Steve Daniel. Here. Ms. Claire Maxwell. Here. Dr. Michael McDonald. Here. Superintendent William Cope.
Here.
Dr. Anita Herron. Here. Mr. Chris Johnson.
Here. We have a quorum with all in attendance. Thank you, Sheila. Madam, Mr. Vice Chair, have you had an opportunity to review the minutes from the previous meeting? We have a motion for approval of the minutes of the November 13th meeting. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Mr. Cope. All those in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. The minutes stand approved. Thank you. Do we have anybody for public comment? Sheila, I don't see anybody. Okay, so nobody's available for public comments. We'll move to item 4, open positions. Ms. Duke, you're recognized.
We have recently promoted in-house a sergeant, and so we have to backfill that open corporal position that she has left. And we have a full-time female detention officer opening, and we have a full-time temporary male detention officer opening, and that, just as a reminder, is for our current employee who is on a military leave.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Duke on the open positions? Seeing none and without objection, we will approve that report. On the data report, please, ma'am.
You have before you on the table the data report for the month, and you can see that there are, as of this morning, 13 young folks at the facility, 8 of which are Rutherford County, and we also have young people from Cheatham, Coffee, Montgomery, Sumner, and Wilson. And I'll answer any questions that I can regarding that report.
I'll give them a minute to look over it. If there are no questions or comments from the committee, if there is no objection, yes, Mr. Johnson, you're recognized. Please grab your mic and turn it on. Thank you, sir.
Ms. Duke, I was just curious to know how many of those are repeat attendees in Rutherford County?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
How many of these, the ones that are in now, are repeats? Like they're coming back, we're seeing them again?
That's something that I'd have to take a deeper look at. I know that the 2 that have to be announced pending court date, one of those is a repeat. I would say that the majority of them are, but if you want specifics, that's something that I can try to look at for next month's report.
So if I may follow up with that, Mr. Johnson, is there a way, do we currently track the rate of recidivism?
The system that we are transitioning away from does not, and I'm not familiar enough with Jail Tracker to know if that's an easy function that it can do. We have the ability, when we look at detainees' computer file, to see, obviously, if they've been in our facility before. But just because they haven't been detained may not always mean that they haven't been through juvenile court.
So can you bring to us at the next meeting the level of difficulty, if it's available, about determining recidivism, not just within the Rutherford County system, but outside the Rutherford County system, if that's possible? And I'm not instructing you to track that yet. That would be a board discussion I'd want to have first. But I think if the software allows you to do that, Ms. Duke, we would like to know that so that then maybe at the January meeting, we could have a broader discussion. I think I'm trying to kind of pick up on where Mr. Johnston was going with that. I think it might be helpful if we knew we had a recidivism problem, then we could address the recidivism problem as opposed to something else.
I can say that for the most part, keep in mind that we are not detaining status offenders. We rarely, if ever, are detaining young people with only misdemeanors. So we are working the closest with youth who have been charged with felonies that were serious enough that the magistrate decided that they needed to have an immediate court date and stay with us until that time. So in general, it's not unheard of, but it is unusual for someone to, the first time out of the gate, commit a felony that is severe enough to be detained, having never been through juvenile court before. They may not have stayed the night with us, but more often than not, they have been involved in some way in juvenile court, keeping in mind that they have several programs that try to work with young people to divert them from the court system and to keep them out as much as they can. So they may not even have had been on probation. They may have gone through a diversion program or been referred to counseling of some sort. So they may have been involved in juvenile court in minor capacity, but the ones that are being detained, it's rare that it's just the first time they ever did anything and it's severe enough for them to be detained.
Mr. Cope, you're recognized.
Along those same lines, Director Duke, I was just curious if I'm reading this correctly, and I think it's just to make note and I guess for my own curiosity, but 11 of these 13 detainees are charged with or detained on violent offenses?
Yes, that's correct.
And I guess it goes along with what the Mr. Johnson asked. Do we know if the two that are not had a violent charge previously?
So are you specifically asking a question regarding the last young person and trying to find the other one that isn't violent?
Well, the Montgomery County and the Wilson County, I mean, even the Montgomery could really fall into that category too.
Wilson County does not use us regularly, so I would say that because they chose to detain this young person on these charges and that this one is on the high end of the age scale, I would suspect that they may be working intensely with this young person and are trying to have seen this person before and are trying before they become an adult to get a handle on and help him or her, I believe this is a young man, turn that corner and not continue into adult court. I'm not familiar with the Montgomery County youth.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chairman Daniel.
Well, one of the things that I'd like to comment on is you're not going to see a lot of repeat offenders in the facility as far as for incarceration, because the most serious ones are either transferred to the adult court, the murder cases, et cetera. There'll be attempts to do that. And of course, the statute, which we're trying to comply with, 37-114, it envisions only detention where you have these more serious threats to personal safety, et cetera, and those then work their way through the system. Now, sort of comment on some of these others. The Wilson County situation, you might have something going on where they are trying to divide two co-defendants, perhaps. That could be a possibility as well. So I think what this evidence is our attempt to, and successful attempt to comply with the statutory mandates about who can be detained and not be detained, and then that's a good thing.
So let me ask you this, if I might. How does the system, the statute, then deal with those young people who are chronic offenders of misdemeanors, and we see repeat offenders with a misdemeanor? My concern here is that misdemeanor offenses, especially those individuals that are repeating misdemeanor offenses, and that whatever we're doing to intervene is maybe not being as successful as it otherwise could be, and how are we avoiding them to stay away from those potential felony charges that sometimes result because our efforts have not been successful?
This is a conundrum because the juvenile system is tuned to being civil. It's not envisioned to be a criminal sanction. It's an attempt to use the juvenile court and its myriad of services to alter the conduct. Only when the offender, if you want to use that term, the resident, has jumped over to the higher degree of personal assault and violence does this get triggered, in which it comes into the facility. The misdemeanors, the idea is to use all of these other mechanisms that supervised probation, intervention, and services to alter the conduct of the young person and to reorient them to the correct performance in the society.
So is it safe to say then that the questions surrounding recidivism were not particularly applicable in these situations? Would that be accurate?
I think that would be accurate, and that would be something that concerns the juvenile judge a great deal.
I was just going to comment. I would say that if you went and looked at the records of all of these students, because they are in school, that's where it started. The schools could tell you that's what had happened. It started with not showing up to class, being disrespectful in class, and it's escalated because it's for some of these as early as elementary school, and most of them it may take a little bit longer. But that's the problem. We need to get with these kids' families before they get here. We've got to get to them where they are and where they're committing a lot of offenses, but the schools are having to handle it, and they're overwhelmed with it. So it's really, really sad, because I guarantee if you go back to all their high schools, they've got a lengthy record back at their high school.
I can report and share that 2 of the young people on this list were enrolled at a point in a neighboring county high school, and the detective who is working their particular case stated to us that the high school had actually suspended them indefinitely, that their gang activity was so intense and so high that they were no longer willing to address any of their needs through the Board of Education.
Yeah, it's just very sad, but they're having to take care of the whole student body. And it's so sad when you have to basically say, I'm sorry, we can't serve you anymore. But I understand why they're doing it. I mean, it's kind of happening here too. I mean, you have to take care of the whole student body, not just that one. But it would be nice if we could help, and if parents would reach out and we could help them with that help. It's just very sad.
Thank you, Ms. Maxwell. Any other questions or comments for Ms. Duke on the data report? Yes, Vice Chair Daniel.
One other point that I guess we should consider is, I think we have, Ms. Maxwell can identify this, something like 50,000 students in our school system. So when we look at this and we've got 8 here, it's 8 we shouldn't wish to have, but overall, we must be doing something fairly right.
Well, I'm going to brag on Ms. Maxwell as being the member of the Rutherford County School Board, and Dr. Sullivan. Rutherford County, has the 4th largest school district in the state. And if you include Murfreesboro, it is the 3rd largest combined school district in the state. And the graduation rate for Rutherford County schools is 96.4%, which is well above our peers in other counties with similar enrollments. And so, Vice Chair Daniel, your point is well taken and appreciated because it's helpful. You know, every student life matters and is extremely important to this committee, but this county is doing phenomenal work at a lot of different levels to ensure that everybody has an opportunity to succeed, and that is illustrated by those results. So thank you for bringing that up. Any other questions or comment for Ms. Duke on the data report? Seeing none and without objection, we'll accept. Ms. Duke, you now have the Educational Services Report, please, ma'am.
So this is for the month of November. Of course, we had a couple of days for Thanksgiving break. We didn't take as many as the kids that are actually in the brick and mortar Board of Education schools, but we did have a couple of days that we gave them off for Thanksgiving. I don't know that there's anything of particular interest in this month as far as the educational report is concerned, but I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions for Ms. Duke on the education report or comments? I'll give you a minute to review. If there are none, and if there is no objection, we'll accept Ms. Duke's education report.
I know there might be something in other business, but if I may.
Please, you may.
I just wanted to, as our commissioners like to say, do a little shout out. And this is probably the first Thanksgiving that we have not had either an individual or a church that asked if there was something that they could do for, in addition to the Thanksgiving meal that the correctional workhouse serves the young folks, which is great. But usually we'll have somebody reach out and ask if there's something special that the kids can have for their Thanksgiving meal that they might enjoy. And of course, we make sure that there aren't any allergy issues, and it's not something that they can bring from home because we don't know if everybody has the same level of sanitation in their kitchen as others. But several of our staff members got together this year, Ms. Todd being one of them, and did something very nice for the young kids, and they had a little extra something that some of our staff was able to do for them, and I just wanted to acknowledge it and to thank them for doing that.
Thank you for sharing that with us, and you know what? You guys do a great job, and I appreciate it. Sheila, thank you. Under other business, we do have 2 items. I'm going to save the best for last, Dr. McDonald. The chair has been somewhat recognized in oversight. I'm not sure why the chair recognizes oversight, maybe because he's old and sometimes it takes a while for him to remember things. But when we re-elected when this board was formed, it was formed at once, and there were some terms that were on 1 year and some that were on a 2-year. And so they were intentionally staggered. Our vice chairman, Judge Daniel was on a one-year term, and he was reappointed by the steering committee and the county commission. But we failed to formally reappoint him as vice chair. So he has been working diligently without the necessary authority from this board to work in that capacity. I'm not sure that the board cares, but it is an oversight from the chair. And so I will, as the chair, I think Judge Steve Daniel has done a remarkable job making sure the chair does his job, and I would be, it would grieve me greatly to know that he didn't want to serve again. So, Vice Chair Daniel, can you give us a summary of your experience as the Vice Chair, and would you be willing to take on that duty for the rest of your term?
I would be happy to continue as the Vice Chair, and just worrying about this, you can see the effect on my scalp there.
Well, what we do need, unless there's an objection, we do need a motion and a second, because I think it is a formality that is important.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve Judge Daniel as Vice Chair. Do we have a second? We have a second from Ms. Maxwell. All of those of retaining Mr. Steve Daniel as Vice Chair, please say aye.
Aye.
All of those, no. I didn't hear any no's, Judge Daniel. You are, by unanimous vote, reappointed as the Vice Chair. I hope you have a long and prosperous term.
Thank you to all.
Dr. McDonald, you, under other business, you asked to be recognized. You are now recognized, please, sir.
Am I on?
You are.
Okay. Thank you for recognizing me. A couple of months ago, the director shared a letter, I believe it was from one of the staff members, that was attributed to a petitioner or detainee that had been in our I want to use the word custody, our care.
Excellent choice of your words.
In that letter, I think most of us attribute it to being something more than just a compliment related to one employee. Afterwards, you and I had a chance to talk, for lack of another word, had a brief sidebar about this. And I think it was probably maybe September, October. Correct me if the timeline is wrong. But I just thought more and more about that letter and more about what it represented. I think we have a phenomenal staff. I think we have a lot of folks on the front line who do work that maybe doesn't receive the recognition that it deserves. Most of our public servant employees don't work for the government because of the money. They have talents I know they could probably take to the private sector if the incentive was about money. And so what I wanted to do today, and first of all, it was a statement, and I guess the other component is going to be a motion. One of four components. The first is that I would like for us to go on record as thanking our staff for the work that they do on the front lines. In law enforcement, we call folks LEOs, law enforcement officers. LEOs, because they're the lions. They protect on the front lines. I recognize that these are not law enforcement per se, but these folks protect our community. They protect families. They do work that, again, goes above and beyond any salary. So the first thing is I'd like for us to do is I'd like for this board to prepare a letter under all of our signatures thanking the staff for the work that they do, number one. Number two is that I would like for us to consider possibly having RCTV, Rutherford County Television, maybe do a mini promo of this board where we go on record thanking our staff for the work that they do. And then number four is that I would like for us to explore the possibility of creating some type of employee recognition programs. I realize we may not have the finances in our government to do this, but there may be some things that we can do that are in kind that would send the message to our employees that we appreciate the work that they do.
I only got 3, Dr. McDonald. I've got prepare a letter, RCTV, and employee recognition. What was the 4th one? Did you not say there were 4?
I did say 4.
I'm taking copious notes over here, so did I miss one?
No, it actually was only 3.
Okay, excellent.
Yes, sir.
Then I do have proper notes. So I think this is a wonderful idea. And because you're the author of this wonderful idea, I'm going to request that you prepare the letter and present it to the board at the next so that we can approve that. Would that be appropriate? The correct answer would be yes, if you're looking for some prompting.
If I'm looking for what?
I would like for you to prepare the letter on behalf of the board.
Sure.
Would you be willing to do that?
more than happy
and
to
I
do
will
that.
I will, Lisa Kay, please reach out to Lee over at the video and media center and tell him that we would like to do something and put something together with regard to RCTV and how we can do a recognition of that. And then with regard to a employee recognition, yes, sir, Dr. McDonald.
Yeah, on the third
Yes, sir.
point, I actually did a little research. I got a couple professional position papers regarding employee recognition programs. I was trying to save trees at home, so I didn't print any out, but I wanted to see if I would have the leave or the permission from this board. I could just send each member a copy of those papers.
That will be fine. Now, all these require an action from the board. So if, or some kind of approval. Now, this did come under other business. So from a technically speaking, it needs to roll to the agenda before approval if a board member would so move, or a board member could so move today to accept the outline of these action items as Dr. McDonald and I have discussed them, and we could move forward. But I'm at the will of the board on either option. Please, Dr. Herron, you're recognized.
Does the mayor do proclamations?
Yes, well, the mayor can do proclamation, and so that just to show you, Dr. Herron, how proclamations work. A proclamation or a resolution is generated out of my office, although we don't always, as a matter of fact, only sometimes do we generate the language. The resolution or proclamation originates from my office, but the language is typically given to us. So if we wanted to do a proclamation, the mayor's office would just need some help putting that language together, and then we can absolutely could do something like that.
Would it be better to do a proclamation, including some of those resolutions from your letter, or or both? I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great idea. But what I would encourage us to do is to have some time to deliberate about this, come up with a grocery list of maybe different ways and methods that we can recognize our staff, and clearly a proclamation would be in order. But again, as you indicated, it could be this in addition to some other things. Yeah.
So, and I see you, Director Cope, just a second. So what I'm hearing, and I think maybe this, maybe we want to take these 3 ideas and then let's spend between now and the next meeting in January, and because we're not in any particular rush, are we, Dr. McDonald? I think there out of this may come some, not, I won't say better ideas, but additional ideas about how we can recognize staff and what we can do in that regard. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. My hope is that we would be more deliberate about it, have some time to really think about it, and as just as a collective board, identify a myriad of ways that we can recognize our employees, because there may be some things that is perceived to be recognition by one employee, but another employee may not be moved by that.
That's correct. That's correct.
So again, I think the goal would be to come up with maybe a collaboration of this board and come up with a grocery list of different ways that we can recognize employees and have something that has staying power. It's not just this gunshot, shotgun approach to
Right.
see what sticks to the wall. Let's come up with something that can be sort of incentive oriented. And again, it may not be any money related to it because we can't afford to do that. But there are other in-kind methods out there that we can clearly capture.
Well, and with regard to the RCTV piece, I can get Lisa Kay, you're back there, Lisa Kay again, is the Public Information Officer for the county. If you would be prepared at the next meeting to make a presentation on what an RCTV thank spot would look like, where this board potentially would participate. Mr. Cope?
I love all the ideas. I just think that on that third one especially, we probably need to consult and/or include our HR director.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Also, just to throw this out there, we currently have a small employee recognition program that exists. We do it on the quarter. We have supervisor of the quarter, and we have officer of the quarter. The in-kind that they get is that because we wear a uniform regularly, they get to pick a day where they don't have to wear the entire uniform. They have to keep the main part of the uniform, but they can wear jeans on the day that they choose. They get a choice day off that they may not have gotten in the past, and we work with each other to try to give them that opportunity to do that. They get obviously a recognition in their employee file that they were the employee or the supervisor of the quarter. When our education department is including a brochure that they do on the items that they give to parents during parent what do they call it? It's a parent and teen counseling that they kind of have after hours. The supervisor and the officer of the quarter has a spotlight in that little brochure, as well as our pastor Mike Davis has worked with several local businesses who have generously, not in the case like we talked about earlier, do something for the kids, but he's able to have different local restaurants donate milkshakes or food for the different shifts, and he's pretty good about going out there and beating doors and trying to include that as well as part of his services for the department.
Yes, sir. Dr. McDonald.
One quick question. I know we have an accreditation component for the facility, and that's a form of recognition for the facility. What about when we have employees who have certification? They may be going through continuing education. Is that something maybe we could include as part of the recognition when they achieve or meet their continuing education credits?
If we have an employee who is doing something like that, anytime that they attend something or complete something that is work related, whether it's something that we've sent them to or it's something they choose to do, they have the option to include that into their employee file. I don't know that I've got very many folks that are currently exploring that, but I can say that HR does send out regularly is options that they have for folks who are wanting to go back to school for whatever reason, and they have some scholarship availability that you can apply for. Of course, it's limited, and you have to make your case for it. But those are some of the options that the HR department has. Mm-hmm.
If there are no questions, then if it's acceptable to the board, then we will put this on January's agenda for a more detailed discussion. Would that be acceptable? Ms. Duke?
The only thing I would add to that is to say that, and not that it changes anything, but January is also a quarterly report month, so there will be data and information from the past 3 months included in that agenda as well. Not that we generally have spent a ton of time on it, but it will be more lengthy on the agenda than normal.
Understood, and I think we can manage that. Yes, Vice Chair Daniel.
There's, on other items of business, I wanted to bring this up. There's been news reports of an audit of the Knoxville Juvenile Detention Center dealing with the concept or it's basically solitary confinement, but we call it seclusion. And they have been subject to criticism for failure to document seclusion correctly, as I understand the news report. And so I wanted to redirect our attention to our seclusion policy, which is on page 171 of our SOP, and it seems to be very comprehensive as to when you can have seclusion, on what circumstances, the reporting that has to be made, and it would appear that it would satisfy the state as to the policies and the implementation. So, first of all, I wanted to ask if we have been subject to any type of audit of seclusion.
Ms. Duke.
Recently.
So yes, I have reported, and we just went through a DCS audit. There's some information that is contained at the HR department that the state and the county are debating whether or not they have the right to have access to it. But as far as what we do in the building, our rules and regulations, they are incredibly happy with what we're doing. They would and have asked if they could take the forms and the policies that we use and share them with facilities that are struggling in this. But I would also like to say, just as I struggle sometimes when I see headlines that demand or require or suggest that something must be done, and those things are already being done. The headline mentioned that they want the DCS to audit every juvenile detention center in the state of Tennessee. They're already doing that. Now, they may have...
If I may interrupt, so sometimes an audit is required because there is a reported infraction, but many, many times an audit is statutorily required on a periodic basis. So let me ask you this question. Does DCS audit your facility on a periodic but scheduled basis?
DCS does one scheduled audit visit, and then they have a requirement to come in and audit unscheduled. And for 30 years we have had audits by the state of Tennessee. Originally was the not DCS, but over the past couple of years, once it became their job to do so, DCS has always monitored or audited or inspected or monitored each facility based on those rules.
Let me ask you this then. How often does DCS do the scheduled audit?
Once a year.
And how often do they do the random unscheduled audit?
Once a year. So 2 total a year, at least.
Well,
Judge Daniel.
The point that I was, first I wanted to inquire, but secondly, it looks like our SOP is up to snuff, and I want to compliment our efforts in getting
Yes.
that SOP where it would be meeting that scrutiny. So that's good.
Well, I appreciate you bringing that up. Quite honestly, I didn't know until you brought it up the frequency. I assumed there were audits, but I certainly didn't know the regularity, and the fact that there are unscheduled audits contained in that is comforting as well, because what you're telling me is that we're doing well on passing those audits. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes, sir.
I have one other item for other business that I'd like to throw out. And
Vice Chair Daniel, if I may, before you move on to that other item, is there anybody else on the committee or board want to have a statement or comment about the audit question, since it was under other business? If not, thank you.
The last thing I wanted to bring up is the juvenile judge, like all judges that hear civil cases dealing with child custody and support and that type of thing, will make a judgment about exchange of children. And this is sometimes can be problematic with people who are highly emotional, and it's not unusual to have exchange take place at McDonald's or other places. And one initiative in Nashville is what is called a safe exchange facility to allow parents to exchange the children where they're having visitations. And I discussed this a little bit with Judge Lampley last week. This would be something that perhaps that could be done at the detention center, be a location where that exchange could take place at a neutral location, or perhaps, since it's co-located next or close to the workhouse detention area, that would be also an option. I'd like to explore that as a method to provide such a facility for those types of exchanges.
I would like to put that on January's agenda as well, if that's acceptable for you. So January's agenda is going to be an important agenda, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for that. Would there be an opportunity, Vice Chair, maybe to have Judge Lampley come and speak to us about that? An explanation of need might be important.
And if you'd like to defer that till February to give him an opportunity, since we're in holidays, I could try to contact him about that.
I tell you what, unless there is objection, can we defer that to February's meeting? Would that be acceptable to the board? Let's do that, Vice Chair Daniel, and that gives Judge Lampley plenty of time to accommodate his schedule, because I think it would be important if we heard from him. And quite honestly, we're running over a little bit here, but it might be good to periodically hear from Judge Lampley before this board anyways, maybe on a more regular basis. So maybe we can entertain that at the time as well, maybe on a quarterly basis or something, or semi-annually or something like that. Ms. Maxwell?
Yes, Chairman. That actually falls right in line with what I was going to say before
A perfect
we adjourned.
segue, right?
A good segue. I have been very concerned since I got on this board that the school board, since a lot of these kids, like I just said, before they get here, where we see them, they start messing up at school. And so I would like since this is a brand new board, and I've been trying to press to see if we could get to come and talk to someone. It doesn't have to be Judge Lampley. It could be someone from his office, but come to speak to us during a work session where they have the freedom to answer questions and go back and forth and tell them about what offenses that we're seeing, the numbers that we're seeing, and just like what a day in a life of how long, someone will stay in our facility. And so I've spoken with the director, and he would like February for someone to come. And I was going to ask you, Ms. Duke, he wants me to facilitate that because I know when we are having work sessions, and there's 2 of them in February. Should I do that through you, or do I need to call Judge Lampley's office? It doesn't have to be Judge Lampley. It'd be great if it was, but if it's somebody from his office that could come and explain exactly how things work over the detention center and the numbers and the violations and those kind of things.
I think Judge Lampley would be the first to say that he is not in the juvenile detention chain.
Okay.
And that he can't answer those type questions since he is not. Now,
okay.
Juvenile court, I think he's your man, or any of his magistrates. But when Judge Lampley was sworn in and this board was established, that severed the relationship on paper wherein the juvenile judge and the juvenile detention center were connected. Now, yes, we still work together and we still share clientele, let's say. But as far as what happens on our side of the building, besides just general basic knowledge, I don't know that he can answer those questions.
What about someone from from the court, on the court side?
The magistrate.
If you're wanting juvenile detention information, the juvenile court,
No, not that.
maybe I didn't understand the
Yeah,
initial.
they want to see what is going on in this community. And for that, they could take care of
Yes,
that.
that is definitely something that you can
Because
get from
they're not
any
aware
of any of the juvenile court.
exactly what's going on. We know it's getting out of control because we're seeing it in our school system. But the numbers, I think it would behoove them to see the numbers and the offenses and things like that. They know when they get bad enough, they're going to be here. They understand that.
So if I might interject, I know that Dr. McDonald and I had a conversation not too long ago, back when it was a lot warmer, and we were talking about the role and the purpose of this board, and that the primary purpose was the rewriting of the SOP, which you have referenced, Judge Daniel, to be completed, and we need to be diligent and make sure that it's constantly up to date. But then you and I had a conversation about how this board could be more proactive and less reactive. And that proactive part, I think for me, and I'm reminded of that conversation for where this is going, in that I'm not interested in getting a lot of data as much as I am getting perspective from other people who interact with our juveniles who are in trouble, and how we as a board then can take that information, now that perspective, and be more proactive for them, which is why I specifically said maybe Judge Lampley, but maybe one of the magistrates are better. But you're now talking about Dr. Sullivan, and all of these entities interact with our youth, our troubled youth, and I think if Dr. McDonald is correct, and I believe he is, then we have an opportunity to kind of reframe this board just a little bit. We've done the heavy lifting on the SOP, but now what can we do in addition to that to be more proactive in our community? And I think we need other perspectives. That was a conversation you and I had. Am I misstating it?
Oh, no, you're not mistaken. It was during the summer.
That's right. It was hot.
It was very, very hot.
Do you remember where we were?
We were over at the cemetery.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Not that has any kind of
That's not a metaphor for anything.
in terms of the merit of this, but one of the things that came to mind after we talked is that, again, having these collaborations, a lot of communities have what's called a juvenile justice cabinet. Called a cabinet, and in that cabinet basically is an umbrella of all the different agencies and community organizations, nonprofits, for-profits that are either impacted by or can impact what we do.
Thank you, Dr. McDonald. Vice Chair Daniel.
As far as services, I think that the area that would be most beneficial to the school board would be the array and discussion with the judge and his administrators of the array of services they have, and in addition, the array of problems that they're having and dealing with, and how they're integrating those programs to try to address those things. But that's not saying that this organization could not help them in some way in facilitating those services, but they already have services that they're providing, and probably there can be expansion of those after you looked into it and saw where you as the school board and they as administrators of the juvenile justice center could work together.
Kind of where I'm going for, and I'm trying.
Ms. Maxwell,
I'm
thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm going to also shout out to Mr. Johnson. He represents an organization that we desperately need in our schools, and it's in some of our schools, but I would like to, honestly, put it in all of our schools. His Manmaker Academy, they've come and they presented to us before, it helps so much, and it touches so many lives. And anything that we can do and collaborate together to help these kids, I'm for. And that is honestly I want the rest of the board to see what I see, and they don't all, because, we meet twice, once, twice a month, and so they don't necessarily see it. But we hear about it. I mean, our principals are talking about it, over the weekend, in the summertime. I worry, how many kids are out there, and are they supervised, and how many are going to get into trouble?
Yeah.
And so that's why I would like for the board to hear firsthand, if not from Judge Lampley, from his magistrate, that'd be fine.
I just want to be clear. I'm not saying that Judge Lampley doesn't have information like what
Oh, I know
you
he
followed
does.
up with. I thought you were wanting his understanding of detention items and detention responsibilities, and I just wanted to
I understand.
be clear that they're two separate entities, and he is completely on top of community issues with juveniles,
He
just
spoke
not
at-
necessarily detention.
He spoke at another meeting, and he spoke a lot about all the things that he encounters, and it was a wonderful talk. And I would like to see the board hear that too, because, like I said, we see the splash headlines, youth arrested for this or that, but we also know there's a lot that happened before that happened.
Yeah.
And that's what I would like to go. And if anything we can do to collaborate to fix it and to make it better in our school system, because we need help. We're growing so fast, and our parents are overwhelmed, a lot of them.
Excellent. Any other comments or questions? Is there any other business before this committee? Seeing none, and without objection, we stand adjourned.